Now this is the story of Naaman, Elisha, and Gehazi. Now Naaman, captain of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, because by him Yahweh had given victory to Syria. He was also a mighty soldier, but he was a leper. He had this disease of leprosy that was all over him, that made his skin go all horrible and made it all flaky, and in the end his limbs, his arms, legs, fingers, toes would have started to become useless and not able to use them. Well, the Syrians had gone out in companies.
But why?
Well, this is a disease that was very common in those days. So leprosy. Now the Syrians had gone out in companies and had brought away captive from the land of Israel a young girl, and she was a servant to Naaman's wife. Now, probably she'd suffered a lot from the soldiers who captured her, and they may well have killed her parents, her brothers, her sisters. She said to her mistress, "I wish that my lord would visit the prophet who is in Samaria," that's Elisha. "He would heal him of his leprosy." Now, Jesus says that there were many lepers in Israel, but none of them were cured, only Naaman. So she said that by faith. She really believed that Elisha, in this case, could help. So someone told Naaman, "The girl who's from the land of Israel said this." So the king of Syria said, "You go, and I'll send a letter to the king of Israel." So he took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. He brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, "Behold, I have sent Naaman my servant to you, that you may heal him of his leprosy." When the king of Israel had read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God, to kill and to make alive, that this man sends to me to heal a man of his leprosy? Surely he's seeking an argument with me." It was so, when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes and said this, he sent to the king, saying, "Why have you torn your clothes? Let this man come now to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariots, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger out to him, saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan River 7 times, and your flesh will be restored, and you'll be clean." So this Naaman was very powerful. He had all this huge amount of money and soldiers and chariots, and Elisha can't even be bothered, it seems, to go out and talk to him. Now that was not because he couldn't be bothered. It wasn't that he was trying to be rude, but he was trying to explain to Naaman that all that great pomp and power and wealth was absolutely nothing for God. That what was required was only one thing, and that was humble obedience to God's word. Naaman was angry. He went away and said, "I thought he would surely at least come out to me and stand and call on the name of Yahweh his God and wave his hand over the place and heal the leprosy. Aren't the rivers of Damascus like Abana and Pharpar much better than all the rivers of Israel?" Because the river Jordan's not very big, and it's often rather muddy. It's like a stream.
Where did you say often?
Often?
So is it sometimes clean?
Yeah, I mean, in some places of the river, it's very muddy.
Well,
"Couldn't I wash in them," he said, "in these great rivers of Damascus, and be clean?" So he went away in a rage. His servants came near and spoke to him and said, "My father, if the prophet had asked you to do some great thing, wouldn't you have done it? Much rather then when he says to you, 'Wash and be clean.'" Then he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan River, according to the saying of the man of God, Elisha. So, although he was wrong to be proud and angry, he also had some humility, in that he listened to his servants. Most powerful men didn't listen to their servants. So, it's like all of us. There was a mixture there of pride and of humility. Unfortunately, the humble side triumphed, because he does go down and dip himself 7 times in the Jordan River, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. He returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and stood before him. And he said, "See now, I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. Now therefore, please can I give you a gift. But Elisha said, As Yahweh lives before whom I stand, I will receive none. He urged him to take it, but he refused. Naaman said, If not, then please let 2 mules' burden of earth be given to your servant. For your servant will from now on offer neither burnt offering or sacrifice to any gods, but only to Yahweh. So he wanted a bit of Israelite soil. He wanted to have a little bit of Israel, as it were, in his home, in his garden. But he went on, But please, there's something that I want you to ask Yahweh to forgive me. When my master, presumably that's the king of Syria, goes into the house of Rimmon, that was an idol, to worship there, and he leans on my hand, that might mean the king was old, and as the captain of the army, Naaman had to sort of take him there, and he leant on his hand, as it were, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. May Yahweh pardon your servant in this thing? Elisha said to him, Go in peace. So, of course, it wasn't the best thing to bow down in the idol temple, or the worship of Rimmon. But, okay, God made some sort of concession. He accepted that, okay, yeah, it will be difficult for you, and he's told, Go in peace. So he departed from him a little way, but Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, said, My master has spared this Naaman the Syrian in not receiving any presents from him. Don't forget, Naaman had brought a huge amount of wealth with him. Let's just go back and read what he brought with him. He brought with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. Well, Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, and Joseph was sold into Egypt for 20 pieces of silver, but this was 6,000 pieces, not of silver, but of gold. This is a huge amount of money. And so this Gehazi thought, wow, just a little bit of that money. And Elisha didn't want a single piece of silver. So, he thinks, I will run after him and take something from him. So Gehazi followed Naaman. When Naaman saw one running after him, he got down from the chariot to meet him and said, Is all well? Gehazi said, All is well. My master, that's Elisha, has sent me, saying, Behold, even now 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me, from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothing. Naaman said, Please take 2 talents. He urged him and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of clothing, put them on 2 of his servants, and they carried them before him. Well, of course, Gehazi was lying. Those men hadn't come, and Elisha, his master, hadn't told him to do this. He wanted it for himself. He came to the hill. Gehazi took these things from the hand of the 2 servants and stored them in the house. Then he let the men go. So he was coveting these things, and now the thought has led to the action. He went in and stood before his master. Elisha said to him, Where did you come from, Gehazi? He said, Your servant didn't go anywhere. That was another lie. So you see, once you tell one lie, it leads you to another lie, and another, and another.
Because you sort of have to do it if you've done one lie.
Well, that's right.
Unless you make it right.
Yeah, it's very difficult to make it right once you've told a lie, because then you've got to admit that you've done wrong. Elisha said to him, Didn't my heart go with you when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? So Elisha knew by the Spirit of God what had happened, and he'd seen it all, like he was watching it on a screen, like it was a live video. Rather like Peter knew that Ananias and Sapphira had lied about money. And so Naaman goes on, Is it a time to receive money, garments, and olive groves and vineyards, sheep and cattle, and male servants and female servants? Perhaps he was actually asking and was given even more than what we're told. So Elisha said, Therefore may the leprosy of Naaman cling to you and to your children forever. He went out from his presence a leper as white as snow. So that's a powerful lesson, not to covet, not to think, wow, that person's got so much money they wouldn't notice if I just took a few coins. These people's house where I am are so wealthy they wouldn't notice if a Barbie doll went missing. They wouldn't notice if a few banknotes or coins that are there on the side, if they just went missing, they wouldn't even notice. And that's what Gehazi thought. And you can see the lesson that God knew that. He saw everything. And Elisha says, I saw when Naaman got down from his chariot and went back to meet you. So this is the lesson of Gehazi. It's a very, very powerful lesson to us. And of course, Naaman dipping in the Jordan River is really like being baptized. And you've got to humble yourself to do it. And we're all proud, even when we're young, little, we are still proud. We don't like to admit we're wrong. We like to think that we should be able to do it our way and not God's way. And to go God's way, like dipping 7 times in a muddy river and then coming out clean, that is God's way. But it was there to test him as to whether he would be obedient, whether he would do this. And fortunately, in the end, he was. As I say, his humble side was bigger than his pride side, or his proud side. So that's the challenge for us, to humble ourselves, to be baptized, and to not tell lies, especially not to steal, because one lie, one covetous thought leads to something else. And we soon get swept downwards spiritually. And it's much easier to go downwards than it is to go upwards. But of course, God's Spirit is there in our lives, also trying to move us in an upward spiral so that we get stronger and stronger and not weaker and weaker.